Well, here we go. Another sports edition of our podcast. As always, I'm Will Webber, joined by my esteemed colleague, James Barron. And James, football season is finally here. Thank goodness. It gives us something to do. But last week was interesting because, I'm in Alamogordo. You're in Santa Fe, where we didn't know that there was actually 2 games in the city of Santa Fe last week. We found out about that after the fact. But, yeah, you wrote about that in our Monday notes. I mean, Ivanhead had a winner. Come out of it. Bloomfield has more wins than I've had than any team in Santa Fe right now.
Yeah, exactly. So Bloomfield and Clovis played their game at Santa Fe High on Friday night, and that actually was a 7:00 start time. You know, they were done just a little bit after St. Mike's and Capital ended up finishing their game after their delay and everything. Basically the gist of the story was. The 2 teams actually wanted to play in Rio Rancho because it's kind of a halfway point for both of them, but they couldn't get either field because both Rio Rancho and Cleveland were playing, so they opted for Santa Fe High. So that's kind of what happened. And what's interesting is that it's actually more equidistant between the 2 schools than it would have been to go to Rio Rancho. I cracked open my handy dandy Google Maps, and it's 198 miles from Bloomfield to Santa Fe, and it's 212 miles from Clovis to Santa Fe. So could have picked a more perfect spot for them to play.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't do that more often. I have a Google Maps story, by the way, which I'll try not to forget here as we go along. But with the state of New Mexico, as big as it is, and driving distances are what they are, I'm surprised more schools don't try to do that because gas prices. I mean, try filling up a bus. They must be spending hundreds of dollars on gas for a trip like that. But
like for example, Cobre came all the way up from Bayard to play in Española to play McCurdy Friday, and you're thinking, well, why not meet in Berlin, or why not go to Socorro? Especially since Socorro's over in Robertson for their season opener. So there were options there. And matter of fact, this week Reserve is playing Memphis, Colorado at Escalante, so they're going to be on the red turf to play their 8-man football game.
Yeah, which is a cool treat for them. Just playing, first of all, Escalante, anybody who's ever been to Tierra Maria, it's a beautiful town. But
yes, it is.
That red turf, especially this time of year when everything's kind of green up there, is such a cool contrast. It's just kind of a cool environment for a high school football game. So, good for them. But, yeah, my Google Maps story. Last week, I drove down to Alamogordo to watch Santa Fe High play in their season opener against Alamo. And so, I've been to Alamogordo, but years since I've done that. So I did what everyone else does. Instead of pulling out a paper map, I entrusted myself to Google Maps. And it clicked me. It gave me 2 options. One was going through Carrizozo, and the other one was this other route that kind of took it around the opposite way, a little bit shorter of a route. And the reason I picked that one is because there was road construction outside of Carrizozo, about 20 miles south. There's a 10-mile stretch where it was just all red. It was like one of those red lines that they always show on Google Maps. It's like, I'll go the other way. So I pulled down this road, and I'm driving for about 15 miles, and there was a sign for Trinity Site. I was like, that's kind of cool. You could see Trinity Site, whatever, go drive by it. And then I came up on this military installation, a gate that was there. That was definitely not on Google Maps. So I inadvertently almost drove onto the White Sands Missile Range. So I had to turn around. I wound up losing like 35, 40 minutes of my time. So thanks, Google Maps, because when it gave me the chart, it gave me this nice green path right through desert New Mexico. I'll try that. And so don't always entrust Google Maps. Always make sure I guess you should do a deeper dive. And so
I highly recommend not trusting Google Maps 90% of the time.
Yeah. And then, of course, Alamogordo, they play in that gray field, their turf field. And I was talking to one of the people on the chain gang. They said, "Hey, what do you think of our turf?" It's like, "Yeah, I don't like it." Come walking in, it looks like a giant asphalt like parking lot, like one of those playground basketball courts.
It's like you're playing old school football back in the day when you didn't have grass fields or anything like that. You went out on a parking lot and everybody with road burns or road rash.
Like, I get it. You're trying to be different. I'm sure in some sort of computer graphics, somebody's showing you the different color options. You think, oh, gray looks kind of cool. No, it doesn't. It's not a good look. Maybe Santa Fe High wanted to do like navy blue. That'd be kind of cool. Or the Vegas gold type color. Of course, it would look like dead grass if you're watching it on the internet.
You'd be like, wow, that place isn't maintained very well.
Yeah, but Gray, it didn't sit well. But I'll say this about the Demons opener. We'll do our picks after we do our break. But Santa Fe High, there were a couple things I really liked about them. One is their pace of play is phenomenal. They waste absolutely no time on offense. I mean, as soon as the whistle's blown, they have the next play called, and their offense is right on the ball. So, for a journalist standpoint, when I'm trying to take notes on a piece of paper in the old school way, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, it is, man. You're having to write. We already write shorthand, but then you have to really shorten your shorthand.
Yeah. And of course, Santa Fe High scored, I think, 5 touchdowns in the game. Yeah. And I think they only got one of them on film for our Twitter account or X account because they score so fast. I'm writing things down. I don't have a chance to pull up my camera and record. I got all of Alamogordo's touchdowns, but I think I got one of Santa Fe High's 5 trips to the end zone. It looked like I was biased towards Alamogordo. I was like, well, it's the pace of play. It's too fast for this old school journalist.
That's exactly what Adrian wants, man. He doesn't want any of our Twitter videos out there so people can scout his team. So
yeah. Santa Fe High, they were down 14-0 in that game. They were down 21-6, and they came back both times, took the lead, actually built a 33-21 lead at one point. And things were going great, and the sideline was euphoric, and things just fell apart. I think the killer for them was there was a pick six right at the end of the third quarter, and I'm standing on the Demon sideline the entire time, and you could just feel this kind of like the seismic shift in terms of like low key panic, maybe borderline sad, guys finger pointing. When the truth is, you still have a minute to go in the third quarter. It's a one possession.
Yeah, it was still a ball game.
Plenty of time. Yeah, it's a huge deflator, but you're still alive at that point. So it's a maturation process. I think Santa Fe High will eventually get there because they've definitely got some talent. It's a good football team. I think they could definitely make the 5A playoffs. I think both those teams will be in the 5A playoffs at the end of the year. But yeah, I came away kind of impressed with what Santa Fe High did.
Yeah, and having seen them a little bit in practice, you can kind of tell that this team's got a little bit more speed than what they had last year. And they're playing definitely with a bit more confidence than they did at any point. Last year, I think there were still some doubts about whether or not they could really compete in 6A. But this group, I think, especially now that they're in 5A, they realize, hey, we can play with anybody. And what I found kind of interesting is that late last night we get the first installment of the New Mexico Overtime Sports Association's coaches poll came out, and Santa Fe High was 11th. But Alamogordo was 6th, and I'm like, wow. So you lose by 8, but you're still not quite good enough to be in the top 10. And I get, there's, a bunch of other, 5A is pretty tough, and you got a lot of good Southern schools in there. But, I think after Santa Fe High's performance, I think they deserve, to at least some recognition to be in the top 10 because I think they're definitely right there.
Yeah, of course, the big test this weekend. They're playing St. Mike's. We could talk about that a little bit later. But you were at the Horseman Capital game last week, and kind of what we expected. St. Mike's kind
nothing to see here, man. Nothing to see. It's what you expected.
Yeah, the big news was the weather delay. It seems like wherever you go, there's a weather delay. There's a lightning delay.
What can I say? And it happened even before I got there. But I showed up and I thought it was going to be about 15. I was going to get there about 15 minutes early, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Yeah, we're in a weather delay." Because I went to go grab something to eat real quick before the game started, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't open till 6." And I'm like, when it's kickoff, and they're like, no, the game got delayed. And I was like, okay, whatever. If that's how you want to play this, I mean, you got a whole bunch of people here, and I'm sure they're all hungry too. So you go ahead and open up at 6.
Yeah, you're brave though. Eating at a concession stand at a high school football game, you're literally taking your life in your own hands. That could make for a very long Friday night afterwards if you're not careful.
It's just my peeps at Capitol. I know where those dead bodies are.
Yeah, it's not the dead bodies. It's the sanitation behind the scenes. Hopefully, people are wearing gloves or washing their hands or something.
Oh, dude, and so they're not.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple surprises that came out of last week. Of course, we both made our predictions, but I think the one thing I was pleasantly surprised with was the Indian School not only won a game, which I think we both saw coming, but they actually scored often. They scored points, which is weird. When I saw their score being posted on Friday night when I was in Alamogordo, I was like, or Saturday, it's like,
you're like, really?
That's got to be a typo. That's a typo. Maybe they're giving them style points, but Santa Fe Indian School, I really think they have a legitimate shot at the 5A playoffs, and I think the magic number for that team If you can get to 6 wins, you got a shot at getting there. So, they should have this.
They're only 5 away now.
Yeah, and I think they're playing a game this weekend. I think they could do well in, but yeah, it's good to see Santa Fe School, a school that's been getting kicked around for years, played pretty well last week. So look, all in all, just glad to see high school football come back. A lot of cool things. There were no devastating injuries in my game, and I'm sure in your game it went pretty well. But
just a lot of cramping by the Capital team, which is so unusual because they've been playing in the heat, practicing in the heat pretty much since the start of school, and they just didn't bother to hydrate themselves or get themselves, physically ready to play, a 48-minute game. So you must have had at least a half dozen guys who were cramping up. And it started like in the second quarter, and I'm like, guys, it's way too early for this to be happening. And I think John Michael Salazar, the Capital coach, is really disappointed, I think, in his team's preparation. And I think he kind of looked at maybe we're not conditioning him well enough because it got a little embarrassing, especially with his linemen. And he was moving probably about 3 or 4 guys out. It seemed like every other series, just trying to make sure he kept guys hydrated and being able to play.
Yeah, pickle juice. That's the secret remedy. It's so salty with vinegar, it'll keep you hydrated. If you can go down to Costco, buy a giant jar of pickles, throw all the pickles out, and keep the pickle juice.
There you go.
That's a secret key. But look, Thursday night is the start of the college football season. And 4 of the 5 NCAA teams in the state of New Mexico are playing this week. The exception is UNM. They open September 5th at home against Central Michigan. But Thursday night, you have both Western New Mexico is playing. I believe it's Adams State. And then up in Las Vegas, you got Highlands playing Eastern.
Yeah.
And that game is noteworthy for no other reason that it's the return of Art Briles on the sidelines of the head coach of Eastern New Mexico. And you and I have talked about this outside the podcast, but there was a kind of a fluff story written recently about Art Briles by Brett McMurphy. And it was one of these things where it kind of, I don't know if it kind of whitewashed history, but it just seemed a little soft.
Yeah, it definitely gave you the feeling like Art Briles was a marked man for no reason at all. And I'm like, is that really what happened? Because that's not how I remembered history when it was unfolding back in 2016 and 2017. It sounded to me like this guy, he may have done everything to the letter of the law, but then there's the spirit of it. And I think that's really where the issue is that, he may have done his due diligence, but he did the bare minimum. What he should have done was more. And, I think it obviously showed. You don't fire a guy just because he does the bare minimum and you say he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, because clearly he did do something wrong in order to get fired. And granted, he got his money. I mean, that's one thing that obviously that came out about the whole thing. But at the same time, I think yeah, you're right. I mean, there was a little bit of whitewashing there, or actually a whole lot of whitewashing there when it came regards to that whole situation.
Yeah, nothing cleans someone's past than revisionist history. So look, he returns, and I think you can expect some things out of Eastern New Mexico. They're going to be better, and you're fighting an uphill battle when you're coaching at Eastern because you're in the Lone Star Conference. You got all those teams from Texas. There's a couple teams from the Pacific Northwest that are perennially national title contenders at Division II. So it's going to be tough. You could bring in all the personnel you want, but it's just Eastern New Mexico. It's just the way it is. And so I'm sure they'll run that wide open offense. It'll be fun to watch. But at the same time, look, we all deserve second chances. Life is supposed to give you second chances, and this is definitely his second chance. And if he does well, he'll be out of there. And of course, he has that clause in his contract. If he leaves early, Eastern gets a $1 million buyout from whatever school takes him. So it's a win-win for both sides.
It is.
But they're playing New Mexico Highlands, a team that has Highlands has had its own issues off the field. It has nothing to do with the football team. Just a lot of circus act motion that's been going on in Las Vegas. So it's really 2 schools that are just trying to shut out the outside noise and just get back to playing football. And I'm sure both coaching staffs, both sets of players, everyone involved is just going to be happy once that ball is kicked off, because it's like now the focus is just on the players and the game and scoring and all that stuff. But good night, man. So you have two schools that are slightly battling their own versions of turmoil, finally get a chance to meet each other. But it'll be interesting to see. I was up at Highlands football practice yesterday. We're recording this on a Tuesday. I was up there all day on Monday. I had a chance to talked to Kirk Tafaseo after the game, the head coach at New Mexico Highlands. It was I believe a 17-minute interview, and he never mentioned a single player, not once. Coach, who's your starting quarterback? He's like, well, we got a couple of guys and this and that. It's like, never told me who it was. They don't have a 2-deep roster online. Eastern New Mexico doesn't have a 2-deep roster online. So after this, I have to write my story, my preview for the Eastern against Highlands game. I'm going to walk out into my backyard, pick up a big handful of rocks and throw them against the wall and just see which ones go where. And then I'll have a better chance of hitting a target by doing that than writing that story, because I have no idea what's going on. Eastern or Western or New Mexico Highlands. So.
Well, Eastern and Highlands obviously are subscribing to the theory that the less information they give out, the better it is. And quite honestly, after the story that you wrote, or that you helped write, I should say, I mean, Highlands really needs to go over to Eastern and talk to their people, their public information people, and be like, hey, how'd you pull it off to where nobody really talked to Art Briles? And basically, what it was we didn't let him talk to Art Briles. Yeah. That's how you get around that. And it's like, I found it interesting that in the McMurphy story, they talked about how little controversy there was with regards to Briles hiring. And I was like, well, there was a little bit of controversy, but the thing that Eastern New Mexico did well was they hid him from everybody. They made sure that they, that the hard questions, especially from like, say, media members like yourself, Will, I mean, and maybe some of the other TV stations, they kind of marshaled that stuff out. And, it makes it look like we don't really care about Art Briles, but I think there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, we kind of care. It's just, they did a good job of keeping us out of the information loop. And, Highlands maybe needs to take a lesson from that.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Thursday night at the former Perkins Stadium, the not refurbished at all Perkins Stadium, still looks exactly the same as it always has. The track is still a nice shade of lavender with some wrinkles and some cuts in it. The football field, which is nearing the end of its life expectancy. But you know what? They do. That team is better. They've got some size. They actually have 50 players on the Highlands roster from the state of New Mexico, which is more than any other school in the state. They've got 20 players from the Samoan Islands. So it's an eclectic mix of athletes.
So that's where all that NIL money went to, right?
Yeah. Well, I think Highlands' NIL budget is somewhere in the low 5 figures, I would guess, for the entire team. But they did lose 3 players. They've lost 3 players over the years to division or higher level FCS schools to the transfer, including Jeff Jones, the running back, the freshman last year, who set all kinds of rushing records. He is now, we're at a school in Texas. I think it's Stephen F. Austin is where he transferred to. But, they should be competitive. I think New Mexico Highlands has a chance to win 7, possibly 8 games this year. They're going to be good, but you got to get through that first step. You got to get through Eastern New Mexico in the first game. So we'll see. And then, of course, this weekend, New Mexico State has its season opener. They're at Florida State.
Nice.
I've tried to lobby the New Mexican hires up to get James Barron to fly down to Tallahassee to cover that game.
Dude, I can go in there. You can go, man. You can enjoy that the swamp that is Florida, that Tallahassee in the middle of August. Man, there is no worse place to watch football than in Florida. In the summer.
Well, we are coming up on one of the weirdest seasons ever in really college football history in the state of New Mexico, where I think the gap between New Mexico and New Mexico State is pretty wide around. It's about as wide as it has been probably since maybe the early 80s when UNM had that 110-1 season under Joe Morrison. But New Mexico is there's a lot of things that are expected of them, and whereas the Aggies are just they're
the Aggies.
Yeah, one of the lower teams out of Conference USA, which is not a good conference at all. So it's going to be an interesting mix. September 5th, the home opener for UNM. You probably get 30,000 fans in there. I know there are certain sections of the stadium that are already sold out. So it's going to be fun to watch. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there's a lot of hype. I mean, there was a story over the weekend from I think it was Yahoo Sports. It did something on Jason Eck talking about just how much of a marked man he is, just in terms of how other schools are looking at him. But I think that's a credit to what he's done. Obviously, when you take a program that had literally nothing when he showed up, and then you turn it around and you get it, you get 9 wins out of it. You almost play in the conference championship. You get him to a bowl game. He did a phenomenal job, and I think the bar has been raised, and people want to see this program take that next step. And obviously, if they win the conference, even if they make it to the to the college football playoffs, you can pretty much guarantee that X going to be going someplace else next year. He won't be at UNM. But it'll be a great moment for this program, and especially one that's needed something like this for a while. The last 7 or 8 years, really, since Rocky Long left, this program really hasn't caught the imagination of the community. And now with Eck, it's like totally different story, and people have really bought in, and it's really awesome to see. And you kind of want to see it come to fruition. As much as you don't want Eck to succeed, you kind of want him to succeed, because then that means the Lobos are doing well.
Well, and the thing and I do hear this occasionally from people who read our stuff, they'll see the Yahoo Sports story, they'll see what Pete Thamel puts out on ESPN, and those guys, the national outlets, have better access to UNM athletics than the people who are out there every single day. The local media doesn't get that kind of access. Like, these guys can fly in from Bristol or New York or wherever it is they're from, and they can walk right on the field in the middle of practice and talk to coach while practicing. They can go to his house and drink beer. What they were talking about with the Yahoo story, they're cracking beers.
You take one step outside of your prescribed area, and oh man, they'll get on you.
Well, that's the thing, is because they know local media is just there to break the day-to-day news, the minutia of just getting stuff out there. Whereas the national media, we only cover just this area, so our footprint isn't that big. Whereas Yahoo Sports or On3 or The Athletic, they reach everybody. And so UNM knows that. Of course, Jason Eck knows that. He's got an agent, and he's got his eyes on a bigger job. Why would he break bread with the Santa Fe New Mexican beat writer on his birthday, drinking beer, talking about his future, when he could have Yahoo Sports come in? Like, that guy can tell the entire world. Whereas people in Alcalde might read my story like, wow, Jason Eck sounds like a nice young man. So
yes.
That's
which birthday were you talking about? Your birthday or his? Because you guys are only 2 weeks apart.
Yeah, that's true. He's a little younger than I am, but yeah, he was. The whole story was talking about how he's drinking like Spotted Cow beer from Wisconsin.
Yeah,
sold there. Like, that's the kind of access you get when you're a national media guy. They're never going to tell you that if you're a local media member. It's just the way it is. I
would say, as a beer connoisseur, that made me curious, but then I kind of thought about it, and like, he's a football coach. It's probably a lager. It's probably not that good. It's probably like an upgraded version of like Budweiser. So I'm not exactly pining to get a Spotted Cow. Now, if he offers me one, I'll drink it just to sample it and try it. But it's not going to change my mind as far as what good beer tastes like.
Yeah, and this is the one thing I tell. Of course, my wife Sarah is a huge UNM booster. She goes to all the games. She loves Lobo athletics. It'll actually bring her to tears when she talks about the team when they do well, because she's that big of a fan. But it's like I tell anyone else that wants to gab about Lobo athletics, is your football team is going to lose its coach in 4 months. That's the fact.
Yeah, just accept it. Yeah, just enjoy the ride.
Right before Christmas, he's going to be gone. He's going to be coaching a power school somewhere. Someone's going to offer him a ton of money.
It might be before Thanksgiving, man. With the way things go nowadays, it could be Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and so it's basically like this. You're on the back rail of the Titanic. The ship's going down. So what do? You dread the future, knowing what's about to happen, or you just like hang out and listen to the music? It's like, all right, well, I'll just
watch the ship sink while you're at it.
Like, it's because there's nothing you can do about the ending. The ending is coming, so just enjoy the ride or don't. You got two options. It's as simple as that, because he's definitely going to leave, and then the future gets cast into doubt immediately. But for the next 4 months, you're on this magic carpet ride. So just have fun with it. And then on top of that, bonus points, you get to do the same thing for basketball. Eric Olin, if he does well, he's probably gone after that too.
Probably. Yeah.
So, if you're a Lobo fan, you're in a perpetual state of stress, is what it is.
Wash, rinse, repeat,
Yeah. So we'll see. The college football season opens this week. High school football enters week 2. I know you did your soccer previews. When we come back from the break, we'll touch on that, and then we'll get to our high school picks for this week right after that. So don't go anywhere. Hey, before we get started on our soccer preview stuff, I just want to plug our newsletter. Go to SantaFeNewMexican.com, head into the newsletters. Subscribe to the sports newsletter. We update that once a week. Probably a little bit more often than not when something big happens, like college football starting up this week. We might have an update later for you. But go into SantaFeNewMexican.com, go to the sports page, and just go ahead and give us a follow. We'd appreciate it. James, the soccer season is underway for high schools, and I know you spent the last few days talking about the season that is, and after reading your stuff, I'm thinking, well, we only need to pay attention to one school moving forward.
Yeah, pretty much. It's gonna be navy blue and white, man. I mean, we're gonna be talking a lot about Santa Fe Prep this year because I think both their boys and girls teams, they're probably the favorites or one of the favorites, at least on the girls' side. I think the boys for sure, far and away, I think the team to beat. On the girls' side, it might be a little bit more competitive with Cottonwood Classical. Obviously, you'll have Sandia Prep in the mix, but really, I think if that's a it's a 3-horse race in that one because St. Michael's is going to struggle this year. So that's kind of maybe a little bit of the surprise is that the defending state champ, they might be struggling just to get in, more so than trying to battle for a high seed. But yeah. And that's not to take anything away from, like, say, Santa Fe High Capital. They're both probably going to make the playoffs just because they expanded them to 16 teams. Not that they're not good quality squads that they have there, but last year one of the problems Capital had was that they kind of they kind of didn't do their part in district play, and they ended up finishing 4th. And they took 3 teams from that district, which is probably the toughest district. That and District 3 down south with the Cruces schools and Hobbs. Those are probably the 2 toughest districts, and you're going to get 3 teams out of them. But Capital was the 4th team, and they ended up losing out on the last spot. I believe it was to I want to say it was Gadsden. And that's the thing that they've got to do this year is like they have to come up big in those big matches when they play in El Dorado or Sandia or La Cueva. They got to win one of those. They did a great job last year. I mean, they beat Rio Rancho early on in the year, and they weren't able to they sustain that early success that they had because they started off 6-0. But to me, that's the one wild card that might be out there. They're a team capable of competing with just about anybody. I think in the state, in Santa Fe High, I think it's going to be a rebound year for them. I think they'll be back in it. They've got a lot of depth, and we've already seen that. I think they had 7 guys already score in the first week of the season. So, Santa Fe High is definitely going to be, one of those teams that you might not want to face once you get to state and everything. But be as it may, you look at Los Alamos and 4A. I mean, they're boys and girls teams. They usually win district. They'll probably be top 4, top 5 seed. But in both of those cases, you're looking at on the boys' side, Pius Academy. Probably Hope a little bit as far as the teams to beat there. And then on the girls' side, it's Academy, Hope, Pius. Probably Los Alamos girls maybe have a better shot at doing something there just because I think they've got some really good talent coming back. But Hope Christian has everybody coming back, and Academy's Academy, and Pius has done a really good job the last couple of years. It's going to be tough for them to get over that. So really, when it comes down to it, you're looking at Santa Fe Prep and maybe ATC boys just because of the group that they have there. But I mean, that's essentially what we're looking at. And I think one of the matches to really watch when it comes to Santa Fe Prep boys is they'll be playing Sandia Prep. I believe it was September 11th or September 12th. They'll match up with each other, and that'll be a really good early test to see where both of those programs are at. That's a rematch of last year's state championship. And I think the one wild card there might be Nimi because they always seem to have a really good team. But if you're marking your calendar to watch a match, that would be the one I would mark down there is the prep schools from Albuquerque and Santa Fe going against each other.
Yeah, soccer is one of those kind of it's going to sound terrible, but it sounds like an incestuous type sport where it's always the same teams.
It kind of is, though. You're not wrong.
Yeah. Like occasionally you'll get New Mexico military that comes out of nowhere. It's just because they have every 3 or 4 years they have this team that's just world beaters, and then the next year they fall off the table and are non-existent. So yeah, looking forward to that. The Santa Fe Prep, Sandia Prep game should be pretty good because that championship game last year when they were down 2-0 came back and rallied to win the whole thing. It was a perfectly dramatic moment for a school that kind of gets overlooked a little bit in the city of Santa Fe, but yeah, good to see Prep at least doing well. But St. Mike's, the girls losing one of the best players. Like them and Santa Fe Prep, they both lost 2 of the top scorers in the entire state. But one is doing well. The other one is just going to struggle without it. So it just kind of shows you maybe the depth, the overall talent level at Santa Fe Prep is a little bit better than St. Mike's right now.
No, it certainly is. I mean, she Adeline Smith had a really good junior class. That's now a senior class, actually, that she's basically been coaching since they were kids. And so this is like those are like her babies right there. And so she's really gotten to know them, and she feels like this group has the ability to go just as far as last year's group. They may not be as dynamic, especially because they don't have Marley Ballou, and Marley was just amazing, just a fast, quick player, and teams just had a hard time marking her. But she feels like this team might be a little bit more diverse, and teams may have a harder time trying to defend them, just because the strategy last year was, Mark Marley, and you pretty much slow down Santa Fe Prep, and she feels like this group here, it'll be a little bit different, and she's trying a few different things, and we'll have to see how it looks. It may not look pretty early on, and they've got they've got a tough stretch of games here. Friday and Saturday they come down to Bosque School to play in their tournament, and so they'll face Deming and Rio Grande, and obviously Bosque School, and that was a team that made it to the championship last year and played St. Mike's. So Prep will get a good test there, but the one thing for them on the girls' side is, that you look at that schedule that they have, and especially their district schedule. Before you could always mark St. Mike's as, okay, that's going to be our tough match. This year, I don't know where that tough match is going to be, because St. Mike's is down, ATC is young. You could say the same thing about Robertson and West, and I mean, nothing against Pojoaque and Monte del Sol, but those are two programs that are just, they're struggling. They're trying to, they're just trying to, gain traction, much less trying to compete in this district. So Prep girls they're gonna have a harder time, because they don't really get tested probably for the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, and you got to hope that doesn't have an impact on them when they get to the state tournament, because when you start playing a little bit higher quality teams, you may not be able to turn it on like you were able to against a Pojoaque or an ATC. So, that's the big challenge for them.
All right, we're going to turn our attention back to high school football. Last week, we started our first, it was picks, high school predictions. And here's the thing you need to know about high school picks is usually I don't know that much about high school football. And so the first week, I usually come out of the gate red hot for some reason. And then by the middle of the week, I'm stumbling right close to 500. So last week, for some reason, I went 6-2 in the picks. You went 4-4, which is just so unusual, because I did honestly, I was guessing on some of them, but it worked out well for me. I was off in the Santa Fe High game. I picked the Demons to win. I also picked Española to get beat, and then they looked great.
Yep.
We both picked Española. We were wrong in that one. You missed the Santa Fe High game. We both picked the Demons. And then you were off in the Cobra game. Of course, you were off in the Cobra game.
The Cobra game, yeah.
Anything involving Cobra, Bayard, you're going to be wrong with. So let's accept that anytime Cobra or Silver City comes into the conversation, you're going to be wrong. In Garden City, while we're at it, we could do that.
That's you. Yes.
And then the Portales West Las Vegas game, I had West, and they somehow pulled it
I
off.
was that close to being right on that. Come on, man.
Yeah, I that was a total guess to me. I didn't know. So
that is only the second time West Las Vegas has won in Portales in the last 26 years.
See, I didn't even know that. So it just worked out well.
That's why I went with Portales, because it's like West doesn't win when they go to Portales.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss, man, and it just worked out well for me. So,
I know it did. But I was looking good for about 3 quarters.
So week 2, we got a Thursday night game. Capitan is at Santa Fe Indian School. Of course, the Indian School won their first game against Zuni last week. We talked about that. I'll let you make the picks, and then I'll give mine right after that. Who do you have? Santa Fe Indian against Capitan over at the Apollo Solari Field.
Well, that's this is a tough one to kind of pick, just because Capitan's usually pretty good. You look at those Southern schools, and I think you just automatically assume, that's a really good team, and I think that's a good test for early on for Indian School. It's probably one that they might not win. And granted, I mean, Capitan coming off an 0-9 season, but they beat Laguna on Fridays, so they're coming in with some confidence. I think it'll be a good game, but I kind of got to go with Capitan. I think they'll win 30-26.
Wow, you went against Santa Fe Indian School.
I did, man. I did. Just I got to see it. See it.
I went through the picks. I actually made my picks already, but I have the Braves winning 26-22.
Wow. Okay.
Man, I am all aboard the Braves bandwagon at this point. I mean, they could play.
You're all in, man. I can tell you're so geeked up. You are so following him through the playoffs. Even if they end up like down in Eunice, you're going to be down there covering that game with your maroon, with your burgundy and gold pom poms.
Oh, yeah. I've pushed all my chips to the center of the table. I'm all in with the Braves, man. It's too bad they're playing Thursday night because now I have to go watch the Art Briles Bowl instead.
I know. I'm gonna have a heck of a time getting in there because I'm not exactly the most liked person there. So.
Well, and speaking of Thursday night, we'll do a couple of college games this week. Eastern, New Mexico, and Highlands. Who do you have with Eastern and Highlands?
I'm gonna go with Eastern. Why not? Art Briles in his first game back. Might as well.
Yeah, I'm picking Highlands, 40-34. I think it's a high-scoring game. See, Eastern is going to come out in that. They have been traditionally that triple option team, and we've seen it before, just like what McCurdy did. When you run a style of offense, you've recruited, you've built your entire roster.
Yep.
In the triple option, and now he wants to come in there and start throwing the spread and run a vertical game. You can bring in all the athletes you want, but the chemistry probably just isn't quite there. Highlands is in year 3 under the current coaching staff, which they've retained, by the way. I think Highlands wins this game in kind of a shootout, 40-34. Although Kurt Taufaseo, he does say that the defense is playing pretty well right now, but I still think Eastern does score, but not enough. So I'm picking Highlands.
I'll just flip it the other way. I'll go 40-34 Eastern.
Okay. Friday night, there's a whole bunch of games. Portales, you get another shot at Portales here. Portales is on the road in Taos to play the Tigers. Both teams lost last week. The Tigers kind of got smacked around a little bit in their opening loss. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Portales did.
Española.
Yeah. Española did win. So Española, I'm going to pick this one first. It's a lot like the Indian school. I'm all in on Española because they made me look like an idiot.
So your color red? Any form of red this year or what?
Yeah. Because I was so wrong about their game last week at Española, and I apologize profusely for that. So I'm picking Española to win against Portales, 33-20.
I'm gonna stick with Portales. Okay, why not, man? I was this close to being right, and this is nothing against Española. I think they had a heck of a game. 7 turnovers. They forced 7 turnovers against Los Alamos. So obviously their defense is playing well. The question is going to be what can they do offensively, and I just think Portales. That's you get those tough Eastern Southern schools that come in. They're going to be ready for what they see against Española, but it's going to be a good game. I think it'll be like a 24-21 game, and I think Portales will squeeze it out because let's be honest, Portales is actually not that good of a team. They went 2-9 last year, and they lost their starting quarterback. So that's kind of tough to deal with, and they kind of look like they struggled a little bit. Especially in the second half against West Las Vegas. So I think they'll do better against a team like Española. And if I'm wrong, I'm just going to keep picking against Española, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind it at all if I did that for the rest of the season if they keep winning.
And now, dare I say, this next game is almost a must-win for both teams. Los Alamos 0-1 at Taos 0-1, 6:00 game on Friday night. Who do you have with that one?
I got to go with Taos. Taos looked like the better team against Pojoaque compared to where Los Alamos was. Los Alamos really struggled on their offensive line. They got to the point where they benched. My understanding is they benched their starting quarterback after the first quarter because he threw 3 picks. So, they're really struggling, and their offensive line was going to be the weak spot. I think they've got skill guys everywhere else, but if you can't give your quarterback or your time to throw, and if you can't create holes for your running back, that's going to create problems. And Taos, their strength is their offensive and defensive line. So I think it's a bad matchup for Los Alamos. I'm going to say Taos wins 28-14.
And see, you look, 4th game, and we've gone different directions on 4 games now because I have Los Alamos. I have LA winning 30-21 because 7 turnovers. That's an anomaly. So something's going on there. I think they get it corrected. Sometimes it's better to go on the road after a loss like that. So I'm picking LA 30-21. Why? No idea. Just a total guess.
Yeah. You've done no research. It's just I like green better than I do orange.
Yeah, their green uniforms look better on a nice green field. Maybe they blend in. You get lost in the defense, whatever. We're going to save the Santa Fe High Capital or Santa Fe High St. Mike's game for last.
That's right.
Robertson is on the road at Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa, of course, Santa Rosa just plays a brutal schedule. They play as tough a teams as they can in 2A. Robertson looked pretty sharp last week in their opening win. But Robertson is in Santa Rosa. I'm going to pick Santa Rosa to win this one, 27-23, because Santa Rosa has had a history of winning games like this against 3A contenders. And I think Robertson, even though they did look sharp last week, I don't know. I get the sneaking suspicion that the Lions are up for this one, so I'm taking Santa Rosa.
Well, and the problem that you have when you're a team like Robertson, or any team basically, when you have to play against a single wing, it kind of forces you to go against everything that you normally teach your kids. Because most teams want to throw the ball, but not Santa Rosa. They're going to sit there and they're going to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball some more, and so it changes up how you want to defend and everything. And granted, Robertson's always played Santa Rosa, so this isn't anything that they're not accustomed to. As great as that 50-8 score looked, it was only an 18-6 game. In the second quarter, they finally turned it on. In the third and fourth quarters there. I think against a really quality team like Santa Rosa, that's going to be a good test for them, especially with the game coming up the following week against St. Michael's. I think Santa Rosa gives them a really good game. I think they beat them 21-20.
Hey, we agreed on one for once. There we go.
Wait, I thought you picked Robertson.
No, I picked Santa Rosa.
Oh, you picked Santa Rosa? Okay.
23.
Yeah.
You want to revise your pick before we move on, just to be contrarian?
No.
All right. Pojoaque is on the road at Moriarty. Pojoaque looked really good in their opener. Moriarty did win last week, so they're both 1-0. I really like the way the Elks play. They have a ton of speed. They're playing with confidence. And we all know that Zeke Villegas is a guy who can get a team pumped up, get him believe. Even if people outside the locker room don't necessarily believe in them, the kids on the field on that sideline do actually believe in themselves. And it's a tribute to the coaching staff. I like the direction Pojoaque is headed in. I'm not quite as high in the Elks as you are, but I do think they win this game 40-28. I'm picking them on the road.
This is the game that I kind of circled early on when I saw the schedule and everything, because Moriarty coming down from 4A, and they actually both used to be district foes for quite a while there in District 2 4A, so they know each other pretty well. Moriarty with that wing tee, again, it's very similar to what you deal with Santa Rosa. It's like they're going to sit there and they're going to run the ball. You might stuff them, the first 10 times, but they're going to pop that 11th one, and then all of a sudden it just seems like that offense just starts to click, and you guys are playing on your heels. For Pojoaque, this is going to be the ultimate tell for them, how disciplined they are, because disciplined teams beat Moriarty, because you have to read your keys. You have to you can't get sucked in by all the motion and all the misdirection that they have there. You have to trust almost. You almost can't trust what you see and trust what you're being told. If Pojoaque can do that, they'll beat Moriarty. But I'm just not sure, because I think when we've seen Pojoaque the last couple of years, that's been their one Achilles heel, has been their discipline, that they don't, whether it be keeping your head in the game, or not allowing the emotions to impact you. That's kind of been their issue. I want to see that happen, so I'm going to pick against them. And if I'm wrong, that's great. If I'm right, well, hopefully it's a good game, and I think it will be. I think it's going to be a 28-24 game. I think Moriarty will probably beat them.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Now, Dexter, the team that made the 3A state championship game each of the last 2 years, they're down in 2A now. They opened their season last week with a win. They're on the road against West Las Vegas, a team that they played a lot over the years. Yep. How do you see that one coming out?
Dexter 34-10.
Oh, smacking them around.
That's all I'm going to say.
Man,
I mean, Dexter still has a lot of the kids from last year's team, and they went down to 2A. And granted, I'll be honest with you, outside of St. Mike's, 2A is probably a tougher all-around classification than 3A is. So Dexter's going to have their hands full this year when they, having to deal with Texaco and Santa Rosa, and Legacy Academy and some of those other schools. But they'll be tested and they'll be ready for this. And I just think that they're the way they've played the last couple of years. Nothing against West Las Vegas. I think that's a good team, and this will be a good test for them. But I just don't think they're quite up for the task here, and I think Dexter will beat them.
Yeah, I think Dexter wins a close game. Actually, I'm thinking like around 30-27. Dexter is one of these teams that they've just had 2 crushing losses in the state finals. It's their only losses the last couple of years.
Yep. And
they do play with passion down there. They do play tough. West Las Vegas, I like them. I like the size that they have. I like the physical play, but I just think Dexter is, even though they're a 2A school, they're still a 3A team in terms of their identity. So I'm going to win that one. Let's go to the Saturday game before we'll circle back to the St. Mike's game.
Okay.
Saturday afternoon, you have Gadsden against Capital in Santa Fe. They moved this game to 2:00 on Saturday afternoon. It's a rematch of the state playoff game last year, which wasn't very entertaining at all. How do you see that one coming out?
After the way Capital played last week, I don't think this one's going to be any more entertaining. I think it's probably going to be a 50-0 game again. Capital just did not look. They didn't look very disciplined. At least on offense, I kind of thought they played down a little bit. They were a little intimidated by St. Michael's, especially on the offensive line. Their offensive line is better than what they showed, and they had moments there where they showed that they could move the ball against St. Michael's. Their problem was they couldn't run the ball. And Dave Bachicha had an opportunity to throw the ball. He had 5 drops, which really hurt, especially at crucial times. So you can see that there are things there that I think Capital can build upon and be good at. I just don't think it's going to happen against Gadsden. I think they'll play better, but I think ultimately it ends up being another 50-0 game.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, when I was down there for the playoff game last year, Gadsden's just they're on a different level. Like size-wise, skill-wise, speed-wise. And it's not to be detrimental to Capital. It's just it's a different mentality. Gadsden is just on a different level. So I think Gadsden wins this. I think Capital scores on almost an accident. I think it's 50-6. I think they don't quite get 50 points. I think they go the entire 4 quarters. Crown Point is up in Española to play McCurdy, 11:00 game. So Crown Point, which won their opener last week against McCurdy, a team that lost to James's favorite team, Cobre.
That's right.
How do you see that one?
Can I just pick Cobre anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm never picking Cobre, okay? Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is a game that I think McCurdy should win.
Yeah.
Crown Point, again, that's another kind of one of those programs that's perpetually struggling. And I think for McCurdy, this is a nice way to kind of get healthy. You get a chance to maybe get, put up about, 28, 30 points, and the crowd gets a little excited and the guys get some confidence. And, I think it'll be like a 30-14 win for McCurdy.
Yeah, I just, I think eventually things will level off for McCurdy, but I do think they win this game. I think it's going to be, if they win, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. Crown Point is just one of these teams that doesn't win a lot anyway. I'm going to say this is just a real sloppy game, but a competitive game. So I'm going to say something like 28-26 McCurdy. Of course, that's a total guess. No idea.
Yeah.
Now, one more college football game before we go back to St. Mike's game. New Mexico State is on the road against Florida State. 5:00 game on Saturday. I know the Aggies is their big body bag game. They can they'll pick up a nice 6-figure paycheck, 7-figure paycheck for going to Tallahassee. How big of a point spread do you think we both know the Aggies are going to win this game, but how many points are they going to win the game by?
I'm going to guess the point spread is what, 35? Maybe 40?
Couldn't, yeah. I have no idea.
Oh, you don't know, man? You're asking a question you don't have the answer to?
Yeah, no, of course. That's my job, is I ask questions I don't know the answer to, literally. Even every walk of life for me. So, yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of those body bag games. New Mexico State's going to struggle this year. There is a local connection, though. New Mexico's punter from last year, Daniel Hughes, is now the punter for Florida State. So,
yeah, ain't that nice?
Yeah, but I'm going to say Florida State wins this game quite handily. I'd say 48-13 kind of game.
I was gonna say 42-7 myself.
Yeah. Now we'll go back.
Interestingly, the point spread is 31.5.
31.5. There you go.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a big the gambling thing. When people talk about points,
yeah, I know, but
I don't get it.
For the gamblers out there, now you know how much to lay on the Aggies.
Yeah, point spreads in restaurants. So at a recent Lobo practice, I was talking to Jason Eck before we did the media scrum, and he was talking to me about how he took a recent trip to Santa Fe for. He went out to a restaurant at some place to eat, and he's like, "You ever been there?" It's like, "No, I could tell you where all the Taco Bells are and the McDonald's are. I don't know what."
Where did he go? Man, do you even remember?
I have no idea.
Of course.
No idea. I know it had seats and windows and stuff, which is beyond anything I can afford.
Pretty much every restaurant, dude. You just described McDonald's too.
Well, if I can't get it by rolling down my car window, I'm not going there. That's the way it is. So, Look, the big game Friday night, Santa Fe High against St. Mike's. Is technically a home game for St. Mike's. They're playing at Ivanhoe Stadium, the big annual rivalry between the Demons and the Horsemen. The Demons did look pretty good last week against Alamogordo. Just a lot of missed tackles just killed them, and some bonehead mistakes, bonehead penalties. But it's all correctable stuff. I think the Demons are actually a lot better. I think they look competitive this year. And then St. Mike's is what it is. They just crushed Capital, and they looked as good as they always have been. How do you see that game coming out?
Well, I think this will be a good game for a little while. I think Santa Fe keeps the game close probably for about 2.5, 3 quarters. But obviously, St. Michael's I think will just wear them down. I mean, guys, that line was just amazing. I mean, Will, you could have run for 100 yards against Capital on Friday.
At least.
There were so many, and I just think that's what's going to happen is that St. Mike's by the end of that third quarter, beginning of the fourth, they're just going to ground and pound. And they will win this game probably, I'm going to say 31-14.
Okay. Yeah, here's the part that's going to make both teams mad. I am going to pick St. Mike's because I just don't see their streak ending against the Demons, although that would be a hell of a story if the Demons
would.
Streak. But the part that's going to make the Horsemen faithful, especially the coaching staff, I know next time I see them, they'll give me a hard time about this, but I'm going to say Santa Fe High scores 4 touchdowns in this game.
Wow.
I think St. Mike's – I'm going to say 35-26 because, Santa Fe High's kicking game isn't all that great. But I think they actually score. The pace of play can be problematic for them, and that's how you can offset the lack of size. Maybe the lack of speed is you just go as fast as you can. And I think that can be disruptive. Every time I picked a team to score double digits against St. Mike's last year, they get shut out. So
well, way to go, man. You just jinxed Santa Fe High.
Yeah, I might have doomed Santa Fe High to score negative 13 points in this game, but I'm going to say St. Mike's wins it. They extend their winning streak to 35, second longest winning streak of all time, blah, blah, blah. But the Demons will be 0-2, and when they start district play, then it's all hands on deck.
Yeah, it definitely is. Although I will say this, and something you kind of an interesting point. They, I think the one area where St. Michael's maybe is weak at that Santa Fe High actually has an advantage on is probably in their receivers against their secondary. St. Mike's their secondary didn't look great against Capital, and granted they didn't have as many opportunities to be tested as I think Santa Fe High will. But I mean, they gave up a 75-yard touchdown to Capital there early in the third quarter, and there were, like I said, there were 5 drops that Capital had, and some of those could have been big plays that could have changed the momentum, especially early in the game. So I think if Santa Fe High can get a couple of plays early, get a couple of big plays, get the confidence going, I think you very much could be a 35-26 game. But if they struggle like they have the last couple of years, just trying to score, it could get away from them pretty quick.
And I think the inverse could be true for Santa Fe High's defense. Their secondary, and I'm not going to throw the kid under the bus, but there was a player in Santa Fe High's roster who was so skinny that his uniform pants didn't even squeeze onto his skin around his legs. It was
baggy, huh?
And he was guarding a receiver from Alamogordo who was 50 pounds heavier, and
at least
twice as wide in the shoulders. But the thing is, Alamogordo didn't throw the ball a ton, and when they did, they were very, very effective against him. And maybe it's because Santa Fe High was so geared on trying to stop the run and crowding the box that they were left vulnerable outside. It'll change when you're playing a team like St. Mike's that they could throw the ball. But yeah, I think Santa Fe High, they're going to have to prove themselves in the secondary before I really kind of go all in on that defense. But, it's only week 2. It's no big deal. We have a lot of things to prove. So that's going to be. It'll be a fun week either way. Some big games this week.
Great week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I know you got your volleyball story, the volleyball preview coming out later this week. Of course, cross country's in full gear. There's a lot of stuff going on.
There is.
Yeah, and then baseball's winding down, which is cool for me because as an Angels fan, they only need 11 more wins to get to 63.
I was going to say, man, they're at 390. And the last time I checked, they're 391 winning percentage. So they're right where they need to be.
Yeah, you got to stay above 380. If you're above 380, you lose it. 380 is the 100 loss mark. You got to stay above the 380 winning percentage, and they're just north. They're on pace for 98 losses right now. So,
come on, it's not 100. On the flip side, how about those Red Sox, man? I know you don't care about that.
And I've said this before. I still have to this day the 1986 American League Championship.
You just will not let that go, will you?
No. And every now and then, I know what box it is in my garage, and I'll go out there and I'll see that box and think, that's the worst moment of my teenage existence was the 1986 playoffs when they blew that 3-1 series lead against the Sox. And of course that was the
World
first year.
Series in 02.
I know that, but in my formative teenage years, that was the first year of the best of 7 series. And so they blew a 3-1 lead, and it was just it scarred me for life.
I feel you, man, because I still have nightmares about the 86 World Series. I was like, well, what we did to you in the ALCS, the Mets did to us in the World Series, and you just don't shake that, even after winning 4 World Series titles.
No, that was the saving grace for every Angels fan. Is like,
at least those guys didn't win, right?
Yeah. At least their pain is probably worse than ours, because yours is in the World Series. At least ours is in the ALCS. Everyone forgets that, but the World Series, the Buckner.
Well, most everybody forgets it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week. Again, go to the New Mexicans website, click into the newsletter, subscribe to our sports newsletter. We'll update that at least once a week. And if, as always, if you have any story ideas, any suggestions, just go ahead and hit us up, email. And that includes if you have a roster for the Eastern New Mexico's football team, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We're looking at you, Eastern New Mexico SID.
Yeah, anything you get would be great. So
they won't be sending this clip. They won't be sending this clip to them, so they won't get the message.
I don't know if the internet gets all the way down to Portales, but you never know.
That hamster wheel, man. It gets tired after a while.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for this week. Next week we'll try to round up a guest for you and talk a little bit more football, maybe some volleyball in there too. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you out on the football fields later this week.